This is chapter 11, the first chapter project of chapter 11 is build your own analytics. And in this project we had to figure out which elements are clicked on in a page, and we had to record their IDs, tags and class name. So as you can see here, we have the HTML. Let's just wait for it to load. We have the HTML here, and as you can see we have a container div, and then we have 4 divs inside, 4 page elements with text. And if I go to my JavaScript, you can see that the first instruction was to create a main container element within your HTML, which we just saw, and then we had to add 4 elements inside the main element, each having a class of box and unique ID with unique context. As we've seen, each has the class of box but a unique ID, which is a number. And then after, we had to set up our JavaScript code to contain an array that we can use for tracking, adding details from each click into it. I called the array track, and as you can see we start off with an empty track array, and then we select the main container element as a variable object in our code. I created a variable called container, used the query selector method to get the container element, and then after that we had to create a function to handle the clicks, get the target element from the event object. So as you can see here, I added an event listener method to our container element, and it has the event is on click, and we created a function here, and in this function we first check the target. We look at the target's ID, and if it's not null, if it exists, we create a variable called values, which is an object, and in this object we have the property of text content, ID, tag and class, and we're going to showcase, we're going to display the text content of the target, and then the ID of the target, the tag name and the class name. And then after doing this, we push all these values, this object here, we push it to our track array, and then we log the track array on our console. As you can see, this is what our page looks like. These are the 4 page elements we have here, and if I open up my console, as you can see, when I click on the first one, we get an array on the console, and the text content matches what we see here. And as you can see, the class is box, it is a div, and it has the ID of 1. And then if I click on the second one, we can see it gets added to the array. Our array has 2 things now, and this one has an ID of 2, and so on and so forth. As you can see, by the end we have 4 things pushed into our array, and the last one has the ID of 4. So moving on to the second chapter project, which is the star rating system. Let me just open the JavaScript. So in this project, we had to take the following steps. We had to select all the stars within the unordered list that have a class of stars into an object, and create another object for the output element. As you can see, this is our all the stars that have the unordered list tag, and then we select them, and then we have a variable called output here that we selected both using our query selector. Then we had to create another object to contain the results of calling query selector all on elements with a class of star, which is what we see here with this variable called stars. And then within we had to loop through the resulting node list, adding to the element object the value of index +1, and adding an event listener listening for a click, attaching a function called star rate to the click event of each star element. As you can see, that's what I did here. We use the for each to loop through each, and then we add 1 to the index, and we add the event listener of click. I used rate here for the function name, but I could have used star rate. So within the star rate function, which is the same as the rate function, we had to add to the output the value of the star using the event target and the element object star value, which was set in the previous step. As you can see here, we have the inner HTML, and it tells us it's going to contain a string which tells us that we've rated this many stars, our value, the target value. And as you can see here, we loop through the stars node list again, and we have an if statement here that checks uh, whether the index is less than the target star value, and it's going to add orange stars, and then else is going to remove the orange stars. So in action, this is what this looks like. So our page is just going to be a page with 5 gray stars. We haven't added orange yet, and then when I click on the first star, as you can see, it adds the orange, and then the string here, the target star value, is shown on our page. And then I can do the same with 3, 4, and 5. As you can see, now we have 5. All 5 stars are orange, but then if I go to 3, the 2 is removed here, and the target star value is updated. So that is all for the second project of chapter 11. Now I shall move on to the third project, which is the mouse position tracker. So with the mouse position tracker, we were supposed to track the mouse's X and Y position within an element. As we move the mouse within the element, the X and Y position values should update, updating us on the new coordinates of the mouse. So we had to create a page element and add sizing to it, including height and width. We had to create style named active that has a background color property of red, and finally we had to create an output element that will contain our text. If I go to our HTML, that's where you'll see all the styles, the active and the holder. As you can see, the class here is holder. And then if I go back to our JavaScript, you can see that the second instruction is to select the main container element and add event listeners to it, to listen for mouse over, mouse out, and mouse move. And as you can see here, I named it elements, and then I selected holder, and then I added these 3 event listeners, one for mouse over, the second for mouse out, and the third for mouse move. Right, and then on the mouse over, we had to add the active class, and on the mouse out, we had to remove the active class. As you can see here, that's what I did. On the event target, we added the class list of active, and then on the, that's for mouse over, and then with mouse out on the target class list, we removed the class of active. And then on mouse move, we had to call a function that tracks the event element client X and client Y position, and embeds them in a human readable sentence and outputs it into the output element. As you can see here, we add this event listener on mouse move that calls the function coordinates, and then the function coordinates, as you can see, it we created a variable called HTML, which is our string, to make it human readable. And in the string, as you can see, we have X here, which is going to be the client X, and then it's going to be the Y, which is going to be the client Y of the event. And then we get the element by ID of output, and in the inner HTML we just print this string over here. And then in action, what this looks like is a white box, as you can see, but as soon as we mouse over it, it turns red, and as you can see, it shows us the X and the Y values, and it keeps updating as we move the mouse. So that is all for the third project of chapter 11. I shall now move on to the last of the chapter 11 projects, which is the box clicker speed test game. So if I just open it, as you can see here, the objective was to click on a red box as quickly as possible, and once it appears, the box will be randomly moved within the container and will be in a new position with random values. And the box will have an event listener that will track the starts and click times to calculate the duration of the click events, and it will tell you your reaction time, your speed essentially. And so now we were given HTML code, and we're supposed to work with that HTML code using JavaScript. So there are 2 div elements in our HTML, one with the class of output for the gameplay area, and one with the class of message to provide instructions for the player. So we had to select those main elements as objects using JavaScript. So if I go to the HTML, as you can see, there are the divs here, the one with output and the one with message. And the first thing we do on our JavaScript is to select them and store them in variables. And then going forward, we had to use our JavaScript to create another element within the output element and create a div that will be the main clickable object, and then attach a style called box to the new element and append it to the output element. So this is where we created the box element, and then this is where we added the event listener, the click event listener, to basically do the step 3. And then after that we had to create a global object called game to track the timer and the start time values to be used to calculate the duration in seconds between the element when it's shown and when the player clicks it. As you can see, there's the game object here, and then this is the timer property, and then this is the start property, which starts off at null. So then we had to create a function that would generate a random number and return a random value, with the argument being the maximum value that we want to use. And then as you can see, it's all the way at the bottom here. This is the random number function. The argument is max number, and it just returns a random number here that is multiplied by the maximum value that we provide as an argument to the function. And then we had to add an event listener to the box element that once clicked, it should start the gameplay, set the display of the box element to none, and then use set timeout method to invoke a function called addBox, and then set the timeout to a random millisecond value, so we can adjust as needed. This will be the time between the click object box being shown and it disappearing. If the start value is null, then we need to add the text content to the message area of loading. As you can see, this is the event listener that we created. There's the function inside of it. As you can see, it sets the display to none to make the box disappear. It sets the content to an empty string, and then we go into the game, the timer property of the game object, and then we use the set timeout method to run the addBox function and utilize our random number, which will have the max of 3000 milliseconds, which is 3 seconds. And then if the game hasn't started, we will the text content will be updated to the string loading, and if it has started, we'll take a variable called current that we have created, and we'll use the date and get time methods to basically calculate the time. And then we're going to create a variable called duration, which will take the time we created and subtract the start here. Sorry, where's the start? Oh yeah, it will create the start. Yeah, there's the start here. It will create the start property. It will subtract by the start property of the game object, and we'll divide this by 1000, and then we'll update the text content to the string here, which is it took, and then it's going to give you the number of time, this calculation here, the seconds that it took you to click on the box. And then we have the addBox element, the addBox function here, which firstly updates the text content of message into click it, which instructs the user to click on the red box as it appears, and it updates the start property of our game object to basically to get the time that it takes to click on it. And then it's going to make the display of the box reappear. Remember, we made it disappear, now we're gonna make it reappear, so the red box will show once again, and then the left of the box will be a random number, and then the top of the box will be a random number. And basically we just concatenate pixels here. This is just to place the box randomly within our container. So in action, this is what it looks like. We are going to have an empty container to start with, and then as we go in, we can press the thing to start, and then we can click it. It tells us how much time it took to click, and then it randomly appears in a different spot. We click it, it tells us the amount of time it took to click, and then it keeps updating to random spots, to random coordinates within this main container here. So that's all for chapter 11. In summary, here we had to deal with a few topics which all have to do with the interactivity of web pages. We had to traverse the document object model. We had to use onload event handlers, onClick, and different other event handlers, and then we had to implement functions within all those event handlers. We learned about onChange, onBlur event handlers also, and also mouse over, mouse move, as we've displayed in the project. So that's all from me. Thank you.